This is Talkback 721-1290 or 1-800-568-5309.
This is Newstalk KGVO, AM 1290 and 98.3 FM. KGVO, Missoula's news and weather station.
Hey, welcome everybody. It is Monday, December 16th, 2024. Talkback is brought to you this morning by 123 Seamless Gutters, family owned and operated, serving all of Western Montana. Hey, they protect the foundation of your future. Give them a call today, 406-240-2669. Also brought to you by Phillips Janitorial, residential and commercial cleaning your home and your business. They do it all. No job too big or small for Phillips. 406-260-6617. Y West Storage is out at the Y on Two Smokes Way. If you need storage, here's their number, 406-510-0590. Because at Y West, we are making room for you. And also brought to you by Harrington Surgical Supply, where you can feel confident in their discreet and knowledgeable guidance on a multitude of products and, of course, their medical supplies.
The views and opinions expressed on Talkback are not those of the staff, management, or advertisers.
Okay, here it is, the week before Christmas. Ho, ho, ho. And that is Mr. Nick Christensen over there. Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
So, you're Giants.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah. Now, you and I have talked about this before, and now you have a strategy, right? A strategery or whatever.
Well, no, I have a coping mechanism, but no. Okay. You kindly offer your condolences whenever the Giants lose, and I then try to remind you that we are now at the stage where we want to lose games, because the more games you lose, the better your draft position is, and the Giants desperately need a quarterback, so I am very okay with them losing, and have been for probably the last 6-7 weeks already.
Yeah, so, they've lost, what, 12 games or 10 games in a row?
Something like that. Yeah. We have 2 wins on the year, and one of them was in Seattle, the game that I went to this year. So,
well, that was good.
So I got lucky. The one game, one of the 2 wins. So I can't even remember our other win, to be honest with you.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, today is kind of a cool day in that we have the KGVO Book Club coming up in about 23 minutes. And a pretty cool book. Michael Mayer and Dr. Mehrdad will be joining us for what I found to be a surprisingly successful program called the KGVO Book Club. And Michael and Mehrdad come up with these really, really good books, and people love to talk about them. So we're going to be delving into that here in about 23 minutes or so. But right now, it's open phone. 721-1290 is our number, 1-800-568-5309. And if I may put in a shameless plug, about, let's see, my daughter's 37 now, and when she was about 7-8 years old, my friend Paul Sepp and I got together. He had a daughter of a similar age, so we got together in his garage and put together 2 little girl doll houses, right? And they're probably about 4.5, 5 feet high.
Holy cow!
With a couple of stories, and he did most of the work. I was a sidewalk supervisor. You know how talented I am with tools. So
I was wondering how these get built. But
But anyway, I will say that wonderful little dollhouse has been sitting in my garage for a long time. So what I did was, because I've been working my way around it and trying not to bump into it, and it's still relatively cute. It looks old. I put it on my dolly, and I rolled it up 150-foot driveway, and I put it on the side next to our mailbox, right, with a couple of big free signs on it. It's about 4.5, 5 feet high. So if your little one is looking for if you're looking for a free dollhouse for your little girl, it's got the little stairway in it. It's got windows in it. It's got all sorts of stuff, and it's free. It's sitting right by. It's on St. Thomas Drive. As you drive down, you'll see it. It's pink, and so if you shameless plug, it is absolutely awesome. It's absolutely free. So if somebody is looking for a little girl's dollhouse, made lovingly by hand by someone who has no idea what he's doing.
You didn't want to save it for your grandson, huh?
No, I don't want to save it for Jakey. No, that's not a deal for him. Anyway, I invite you to just drive on by on St. Thomas Drive, and if you want it, put it in the back of the truck or the back of the camper or whatever, and take it home. It's free. So there's my shameless plug for the day. All right, we're going to come right back. It is open phones, and whatever might be on your mind for the next 20 minutes or so, and then we'll have the KGVO Book Club. So stay with us. We will be right back.
Well,
Dennis Bragg with the updated forecast. More snow, primarily at the higher elevations with a winter weather advisory for up to 3 to 6 inches of snow, but only a trace to an inch in the valleys Monday into Tuesday. Chance of precipitation hovering around 80% with temperatures in the low 30s, overnight lows in the mid-20s, so we'll need to watch for slick roads. Snow levels will be rising 4,000 to 5,000 feet as we go into the middle of the week, so Tuesday looks like rain and snow showers in the valleys, turning to all rain on Wednesday except at pass level.
Hey, welcome back, everybody. Peter Christian here, the fabulous Nick Christensen over there, taking your phone calls this morning, and people are calling in already on open phones. Why not? Let's get Nancy on the line. Nancy, you are up first. Good morning.
Hey, morning glory, everyone. I'd like to share a little bit of Christmas trivia.
Yay.
The tradition of giving milk and cookies at Christmas time began in the Great Depression of 1929. It was parents of Christian parents wanted to teach their children a lesson in giving and sharing during great times of heartache and sorrow. And I want to close today with something that I heard yesterday on the Lutheran Hour on KGHL 94.7 radio. The minister asked a very provocative question. He said, can we have joy without first experiencing sorrow? And it made me do some heavy thinking. Do we Christians turn away from sorrows or those who are needy at Christmas time so they don't interfere in our personal joy? So I just wanted to share that with everyone, and God's blessings the rest of this week. Thank you for taking my call, Peter.
Nancy, thanks for the call. Thanks for that. That's a wonderful thought. Thank you. Lots of very thought-provoking. Thank you. Emmett is up next. Emmett, good morning, sir. You are on Talkback. What's up, sir?
Oh, thanks for taking my call. Well, I wanted to talk about the drones, the interesting drones that we've been...
I thought about that.
All over the place. It's been all over the news. The government, the Pentagon, will not say what this is. They just say, always, we don't know, but, there's nothing to see here.
I know exactly what it is. It's Santa. It's Santa taking his test flights, and the drones are actually the reindeer, and they're out of control. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, I love it.
I have no idea what they are.
Well, I have a conspiracy theory. I believe in extraterrestrials. I'm not saying absolutely they're extraterrestrials. They could be a foreign power like the Chinese. Whoever they are, they're obviously hostile. But don't you think it's odd that they're not being shot down? I know this is the Biden administration. I'm glad Trump is coming in saying he'll deal with this. But don't you think it's odd that everyone keeps saying we don't know what these are, we can't identify them? I do believe we've been under surveillance by extraterrestrials for a very long time. This could be a prelude to something bigger, but they are drones of some kind.
I'm wondering, Emmett, if this had happened in Missoula, Montana, rather than in New Jersey, right? What do you think would have happened here?
Oh, I don't know what would have happened. Perhaps a lot of people might have taken pistols and just shot them down themselves. I don't know. Because we had the balloon, didn't we have the balloon flying over Montana?
Yes, we did. It hovered over Great Falls, over Malmstrom Air Force Base for quite a while before it moved on to another military base.
Yeah, they could be a foreign power, and they need to be shot down, whoever they are. I don't want to shoot down aliens or certainly if they're the China, they need to be shot down, but it sounds very hostile.
Well, I'm also wondering if these had been flying during the daytime, if they'd have banners on the back saying "Eat at Joe's" or something like that. I could understand that, but just flying drones around just to scare the hell out of people, I'm sorry, that doesn't make any sense.
Exactly. So I don't know what the solution is. Should we just call our congressmen and senators and ask for answers? But we've already been doing that. People have already been calling for answers, and no one will give them. That's very disturbing in and of itself.
Yeah. That's true. Well, Emmett, thanks for bringing that to our attention. Appreciate it, sir.
Well, thank you.
All right, have a great day. Appreciate it. All right, it's open phones, so this is what it's all about. Alan, good morning. You are on Talkback, sir. What's on your mind?
Well, good morning, Peter, and good morning, Missoula. I'm going to kind of switch gears. I've got two things for listeners to ponder and think about today. You think our country isn't going downhill. Here's point number one. West Point, on their mission statement, has taken out the words duty, honor, and country. The second thing I like people to think about, the medical Hippocratic oath, do no harm, is no longer in there. What do you think of that?
I had no idea about the medical oath. That comes as surprises to me. And now, what was the first one again that you were talking about?
West Point.
Oh, right, West Point.
And there,
right.
Yeah. So, it's like, why are we doing, who's behind doing
Well,
like
I will tell you this. I had thought that with the resurgence of President Trump, who, of course, is a big one on patriotism and supporting the military and all that, I would imagine that when he finally gets into office in December on January 20th, that might be one of the things that he addresses. And speaking with the folks at West Point, and of course whoever the new director of the armed forces is going to be, the defense secretary, if it's Pete Hegseth, he'll put a stop to that in a big hurry.
I hope so. The last thing too is with the drones. When people shoot them, those bullets have to come down.
I know. It's very You can't shoot it. You can't shoot at stuff in the air willy nilly. That's
right.
I got it.
Okay, and thank you,
Alan. Thanks for the call, sir. All right, appreciate it. All right, we have time to get Jeff's call in before we have to take a break. Jeff, good morning, sir. I'll bet you know exactly what those drones are all about, being with your background in your career.
Yeah, I know, but because of non-disclosure agreements, I can't tell you, so I'm sorry. I just called in to tease it. No.
I know, but I can't tell you.
I don't know for certain any more than anybody else does, but
Sure.
I suspect a form of mass hysteria. That's kind of what these sorts of things tend to be. One person, it's kind of the Salem witch trials. When one person saw a witch, everybody saw a witch. And it needs to get settled down.
Well, there's all sorts of videos out there of people who went outside and saw the drones and filmed them and put them online, and there are hundreds of them. So yeah.
Yeah, but videos of what actually? Oh, these are the drones that nobody knows about. Well,
right.
Maybe it's a drone somebody does know about, and they're just putting it up there to kind of get part of the attention. I don't know.
Could be.
Here's the 2 points. You already had one made. That when you how do you shoot them down safely? And you can do it with kinetic means, bullets, shotgun shells, something like that. And the previous caller already said, where are they going to land and who are they going to hurt?
Yeah.
And what's the liability you're going to encounter?
What goes up must come down. Yeah.
And how do you do that close to a military base? And how far do they need to be spaced? And how do you do that?
I think one of the interesting things, Jeff, is that these are just off the coast of New Jersey, and people are assuming that they're coming from some sort of marine source somewhere. Some boats out there with putting the drones up in the air, and then they go back in the boats, and the boats disappear, and off we go.
Yeah, the mothership. The dreaded mothership. Yes. No, the other way you can take them down is via electromagnetic pulse. You can jam them or do that sort of thing. But again, that frequency range that those drones operate in, at least commercial drones, is pretty cramped with a bunch of other stuff.
Like planes?
And if you start jamming, you're going to affect a whole bunch of people.
No kidding.
You release an EMP or burn out things. That's not going to work either. So. And I would defy anybody to say, what have they done that's hostile? Emmett said, obviously hostile. How? Have they killed anybody? Have they shot anybody? Have they done anything threatening? They've flown, and that's all we know about. There's a guy that I listened to who was saying it's probably some sort of sniffing, looking for gas, maybe government looking for a nuclear material that's gone missing and don't want to tell anybody. Those sorts of things are much more plausible than an Iranian mothership.
Well, the Chinese sky balloon wasn't hurting anything either, except when it hovered over military bases and installations, and the Biden administration took its sweet time shooting it down.
Well, they tried actually earlier, and they failed because our weapons are designed to shoot level or down, not up. So they had a hard time reaching. It was at an elevation, and it was hostile, but was it threatening?
Yeah, I hear you.
Those are two different things.
All right.
So, I'm not going to call it threatening until we have facts. So
got it. You bet.
Rule.
Jeff, as always a great call. We appreciate it. We're going to come right back. By the way, the phone lines are clear. What is on your mind this morning? It's open phones for another 7 or 8 minutes. 721-1290 is our number. We're coming right back after this.
With KGRZ Sports, I'm Ace Hourwine with the Daily Update, brought to you by Republic Services. The FCS semifinals are set. On the left side of the bracket, it's Montana State and South Dakota. On the right side of the bracket, South Dakota State and North Dakota State. Getting there, the Montana State Bobcats defeated the Idaho Vandals last Friday from a jam-packed Bobcat Stadium. Final score 52-19. The Bobcats will take on South Dakota after the Coyotes outscored the UC Davis Aggies 14-7 in the second half. On the right side of the bracket, it'll be two Missouri Valley teams. The North Dakota State Bison topped Mercer 31-7 in a game that was never really close. North Dakota State will get a rematch against South Dakota State. The defending FCS champions dispatched Incarnate Word 55-14. That's a look at sports. I'm Ace Hourwine.
Thanks to generous community support, Wounded Warrior Project has helped post 9/11 veterans and their families since 2003. Through no-cost physical and mental health services, legislative advocacy, career assistance, and life skill training, we're there every step of the journey.
It's possible to feel understood,
to get support when it's needed most.
And now I know anything is possible.
And we're just getting started. Learn more at woundedwarriorproject.org/possible.
Hey, we are back. It is Talk Back. It's open phones for another about 5 minutes, and then we're going to jump into the KGVO Book Club. But let's get Harry. Harry, first of all, thank you for holding through the break, sir. What's on your mind?
Yeah, good morning. This thing about the drones. I mean, Jeff, I agree with him. Especially about, well, are they really a threat? I mean, if they're just flying over us, they were civilians, who cares? I mean, we have planes fly over us all the time. Now, if they're flying over military bases, that's the military. Their idea, they got to determine whether it's a threat or danger.
You're right.
So, I mean, I don't know what people are freaking out about. I mean, it's, oh no, I got a plane flying over my house. It's the same difference as a drone. Who cares? I mean, what are they going to see? Your top of your house? I mean, who knows? But it's the whole thing that the civilians freak out. Like I say, if it's the military, they can freak about it if they want to. They determine whether it's a threat to them or not. But
I think. Well, it could be, Harry. And again, this is all just speculation. It could be a bunch of people saying, "Hey, let's see if we can get on the news, right? We've all got these drones. We bought them together. We got a drone club or whatever the heck it is." And because I interviewed the folks that run the drone program at the University of Montana, it is absolutely fascinating the things that they do. And so I mean, go ahead.
Yeah. And also, they might be practicing for the flying car thing, because that's what the whole idea is, that the taxis, flying taxis, that they'll be just automated, so people won't be flying into things. They'll just be the machine itself flying it. So who knows? But that's still, I don't understand the big freak out about it. Really don't.
Well, it is amazing the things we will spend our money on and the things we'll watch TV to see what's going on.
Right, and if people haven't noticed it before, all of a sudden it makes the news, and everybody's looking up, like, oh, well, geez, look at that. And it's like, who could have been doing that for a month, or so before? So
I hear you.
It's people just and they say, don't freak out. Unless they're dropping bombs on you, then you can freak out.
Or water balloons or something like that.
Yeah.
Harry, thanks for the call. Right. We appreciate it, sir. Tim is on the line. Tim, good morning, sir. You're going to wrap things up for open phones today. What's up?
Great. I've got a conspiracy theory for you.
Right.
On January 20th, we're going to have all the most important people in the United States on the steps of the Capitol for inauguration.
Okay.
According to the sheriff in Mercer County, New Jersey, he saw almost 50 drones coming in off the ocean. What happens if we have an adversarial country flying these drones in and testing our protection of the coast? So when you've got presidents, everybody on the Capitals, what's stopping somebody from drying? And we know already that they're using drones in war. What's stopping a country from anchoring a ship off the coast and flying in 200 drones armed with bombs and taking out the Capitol? So they're testing our security of the coast.
Okay. All right. Thanks for the call. We appreciate it. Yeah, testing our security for the coast. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to leave you with open phones. Anyway, well, stay with us because we have Dr. Michael Mayer here in the studio already, Professor Emeritus at the University of Montana, joining us here very quickly. Professor Mehrdad Kia with the University of Montana, and we'll be talking about the KGVO Book Club, ladies and gentlemen. And the book is called The Unraveling, Reflections on Politics Without Ethics. Wow. And Democracy in Crisis. We'll talk about that when we return right after this quick timeout.
Dennis Bragg with the updated forecast. More snow, primarily at the higher elevations with a winter weather advisory for up to 3 to 6 inches of snow, but only a trace to an inch in the valleys Monday into Tuesday. Chance of precipitation hovering around 80% with temperatures in the low 30s, overnight lows in the mid-20s, so we'll need to watch for slick roads. Snow levels will be rising 4,000 to 5,000 feet as we go into the middle of the week, so Tuesday looks like rain and snow showers in the valleys, turning to all rain on Wednesday except at pass level.
Class. Okay. All right, ladies and gentlemen, it is time now for the KGVO Book Club. I'm Peter Christian, Mr. Nick Questions right over there, taking your phone calls. And one of the most important phone calls we're getting today, of course, is right now with Dr. Mehrdad Kia joining us on the phone from the University of Montana. And here at the studio, Professor Emeritus Dr. Michael Mayer. And we're talking about, gentlemen, please introduce the book. And who's going first?
Go ahead, Mehrdad.
Mehrdad, it's all yours.
Mike will go first.
Okay, in that case, I'll go first.
Because I want to forewarn our listeners that this was one book I had. I have to admit I was disappointed with, and I do have some issues with it. And I will explain it as Mike will introduce it.
Right. All right.
And I joined Mehrdad in that. I also have some reservations about this and was disappointed in the book. The book's by Bauer, who is maybe familiar to some of our listeners. He was counsel to Obama's campaign and White House counsel to Obama, and then counsel to Obama's campaign in 2012. He was counsel to Biden's campaign, and he is Biden's personal counsel.
Now, when you say counsel, you're talking about an attorney, right?
Okay. Right. He's the lawyer, the official lawyer.
Okay, gotcha.
Or the lead lawyer.
The counsel of record.
Yeah. He's a graduate of Phillips Exeter Academy, bachelor at Harvard, law degree from Virginia, really elite credentials. But in a sense, what you have here is the book of a savage political partisan who would like to think he's reflective because he does raise some concerns about some of his past activities, and he admits maybe we went too far on that one or we were wrong. But it's always, well, the Republicans were worse, or the Republicans did it first. It gets to be tiresome. He also was a member of Perkins Coie, which is a law firm some of you may recognize because he started the political division of that firm, and it was that division, although he had left, that was responsible for the Steele dossier paid for by the Clinton campaign, laundered through Perkins Coie.
Perkins Coie, by the way, does have some ties to Montana.
In fact, it's a Seattle firm.
Right,
Their big office, I guess these days, or certainly their political office is in Washington. But and they later split off from the main firm. But the founding office of Perkins Coie is in Seattle. But anyway, it's an interesting book in several respects because it does raise important issues. But let me just give you an example of what I mean by a very partisan approach. He talks about Willie Horton, the Willie Horton ad in 1988. Which was an ad that featured an image of Willie Horton, who was a convicted murderer or rapist, I forget which, but who was put out on parole in Massachusetts, went down to Maryland and murdered a couple after raping the wife. And he became an issue in the 1988 campaign. And Bauer talks about how the Republicans used this. And how it was, and the Bush campaign used this against Dukakis, who was governor of Massachusetts, and how this was a racist ad. Well, what he doesn't say is, because it featured the image of Willie Horton, who was black. But what he doesn't say is the first campaign to use the image of Willie Horton against Dukakis was a primary opponent named Al Gore.
Oh, my goodness.
And we don't get any sense that might have been racist, that Gore used it, or that it might have been racist if Gore used it. And this is the kind of thing that that makes it kind of difficult to take his concern about his own participation in some pretty rough politics very seriously. And I think I'd like to go to one particular issue, which was a campaign. We mentioned this when we talked about the book last month, but a campaign that took place in 1984 in Indiana's 8th Congressional District. One of the closest races, maybe the closest in American history. And the Democratic incumbent lost the initial count. There was a recount and another recount. And the Republican came out ahead by a little bit more after the recounts, and they sent the certification to Washington, and the Democratic majority in the House of Representatives refused to seat the Republican. And they can do that. The House can determine its membership.
Wow!
And they then conducted their own recount or investigation, whatever you want to call it, and declared the Democrat the winner by 4 votes. And he mentions that and he even says, I think we went too far there. That this was an exercise in raw power. The Democrats had control of the House at that point for 30 years without break, and would have it for another 10. They didn't know that. They assumed they'd have it forever, which is why they did that. They didn't need the seat. They had a big majority. They did it because they had the power and they could do it, and they did. And he said that was probably, maybe a step beyond what they really should have done. What he doesn't tell you is how important that was in developing the bitter partisanship of modern politics, because when the Democrats swore in the Democratic candidate from the 8th District of Indiana, the entire Republican caucus got up and walked out.
Wow.
And they were led by a young insurgent named Newt Gingrich, whom he does mention later on. He doesn't like and thinks he's a partisan. Well, he was, but that's why he emerged as a Republican leader, because Republican leaders like Bob Michel, who was then the Republican leader in the House, had been in the minority their entire career. They never expected to be in the majority. They just sort of were go along, get along kind of guys. Gingrich was more of a firebrand, and that was the beginning of his rise to leadership. But again, even the account of that, which Bauer admits was probably an excess of partisanship, he leaves out the significance of that, because while most people have never heard of that, every Republican member of Congress through the early years of the century could give you chapter and verse about that. They were just steamed. And so, I mean, this is what I think from what our brief conversations about this have been. This is what concerns Mehrdad. I mean, the fact is that Bauer is one of the leaders in really rough politics, and he leaves a lot of stuff out. And one of the things that is so, it strikes me as tawdry, he diminishes the Democrats' misdeeds. He always says, well, the Republicans were worse, and he always cites either Nixon or Trump. Well, first of all, those are relatively easy targets. But second, Orange Man bad is not an excuse for every misdeed by the Democrats. It doesn't make their partisan activities or their stretching of the rules.
What do they call dirty tricks?
Yeah, well, exactly. And we talked last month about Dwight Chapin, who did repent his role in dirty tricks, and I think reasonably sincerely, that's exactly what part of Bauer's career was. Some of it was more serious than just dirty tricks. I mean, like the Indiana race in 1984. But again, and he acts as if the Russian collusion thing was real, that it hadn't been disproved. I mean, it's just it is. While it has virtues, he's certainly a knowledgeable and bright guy. He just can't get past his own
but they're blind
partisanship.
spots.
Yeah, exactly.
They're blind spots.
And there's a lot of interesting information in the book.
You bet. We're going to come right back. By the way, if you haven't read the book, or better yet, if you have read the book, we would love to have you give us a call at 721-1290, 1-800-568-5309. If you're into politics, and a lot of our listeners are, this might be a good book for you to pick up and peruse. And we'll talk more about it. We'll be here till 10 o'clock this morning for the KGVO Book Club. We'd love to have your participation, your input. We're coming right back after this.
How was your drive to school?
Let me tell you, I had to get my iced coffee first. I just can't seem to put it down. My favorite rapper just announced a tour. My phone was buzzing like crazy. I'm so excited. I had to text all my friends right then to talk about it. Then someone started calling me and...
Let's try that again.
I turned my phone off right away. I never drive distracted.
Visit StopTextStopWrecks.org. A message brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, Project Yellow Light, and the Ad Council.
Hey, welcome back to Talkback. 721-1290 is our number, 1-800-568-5309. All right, it's the KGVO Book Club. We are rocking right along with Dr. Mehrdad, who's on the phone with us at the University of Montana, Professor Emeritus Dr. Michael Mayer joining us here as well. And the book we're talking about, the KGVO Book Club, The Unraveling, Reflections on Politics Without Ethics and Democracy in Crisis by Bob Bauer. And Rick has been waiting throughout the break. Rick, good morning. What's your question or comment, sir?
Yeah, it's fairly ironic for me that you say that this guy is an Obama ally. I was wondering if the book mentions Harry Reid. I haven't read the book. Whenever I hear Harry Reid's voice, my blood just boils. During the Obama campaign, he was about the most unethical politician that you could find. And after Obama was elected and Harry Reid was interviewed one time, and it was brought up about his ethics, and his comment was, we won the election, didn't we? And I was wondering if you could comment if Harry Reid is in the book. And I think because of the 24-hour news cycle, it had started around then that Harry Reid was pasted everywhere on the news, and that I just believe that in modern times he's the one that has turned politics into what it is now, which is unethical. So could you comment on that?
All right, Rick, thanks for the call, sir. We appreciate it. Lots to
Rick,
talk about there.
It's a very good question, and interestingly enough, Reid is not mentioned. And as soon as Rick called, I turned to the index, and did I miss something? His name doesn't even appear in the index.
Oh.
But Harry Reid was the Democratic leader in the Senate, and he did a couple of things that are worth talking about that go toward what Rick was saying. First of all, during the campaign in 2012, he said, protected on the floor of the Senate, that the word was out that Romney didn't pay any taxes or didn't pay his taxes. And it turned out that was absolutely false. Romney paid tons of taxes. He made an awful lot of money. But Reid also was, as Rick suggested, a leader in partisanship. He's the one who changed the rule for nominations. In the Senate, it takes 60 votes to approve. It used to take 60 votes to approve nominations to the courts, and he changed that for the district courts and the appellate courts to get Obama's nominees through. And then when the Republicans came in, they changed it to include the Supreme Court, which is what paved the way for their ability to get through three of Trump's nominees. A lot of Reed's things backfired, and people warned him at the time. These things can backfire. You may not always be in power, and they can turn around and bite you on the behind. And in Reed's case, several of the more I guess drastic or procedural changes that Reed made did come back and bite the Democrats. Although the point about the false accusation about Romney's taxes, he did say, as Rick quoted him, he did say, we won the election, didn't we? And in fact, they did.
I think that one of the ironies of the book, and I think Rick's question does allow us to address it, is that the book's claim is basically that it's trying to restore, or it's an attempt to restore political ethics at the center of the renewal of American democracy. So you get excited reading it in the beginning, I think. This is what I alluded to in terms of my own sort of disappointment. And then as you start reading it, it's actually, it's an easy read, and there is a voice of humility about him. He does have a reflective voice, kind of a reflective nature. And, he talks about, there are, as the reviews even say, fascinating tidbits about his past, including touching stories about his father and so on and so forth. And then he goes into these various political situations he has encountered, so on and so forth. So you think, wow, this might be actually an interesting, reflective, in-depth, critical view of the political situations we are, because politics is, after all, a brutal game, and he has been in the middle of it. Then you suddenly realize that actually you should read the book not as a new door, new opening to let's have a real, genuine discussion about restoring political ethics at the center of the renewal of American democracy. But the book itself is a reflection of why we are in trouble. That is, the person who is trying to claim that we have to restore ethics, political ethics, he himself is so partisan that he cannot even admit to it. So I think the book should be read as a reflection of why we have an issue. That is, politics has become, in a way, and I hate to use the word, such a dogmatic and fanatical view of self-identity that we cannot transcend, the Republican versus Democrat, Democrat versus Republican discourse. And we have to blame one side in order to justify, our own behavior, actions, and policies.
You bet. With that, we're up against a commercial break. We have Helena waiting to weigh in on this book called The Unraveling, Reflections on Politics Without Ethics and Democracy in Crisis. Would you like to get in on the conversation? We'll be here till 10 o'clock discussing this. So give us a call, 721-1290, 1-800-568-5309. We're coming back right after this.
Explore the
Welcome back to Talkback, 721-1290. That's the number. We've got about 7 minutes or so before we get to our top of the hour break. But the KGVO book club rolling right along, and Helena has been waiting. Hey, Helena, good morning. What's on your mind, ma'am?
Yeah, good morning. I'm wondering what Bob Bauer says about his relationship with Obama-Biden administration, and also with the Biden-Harris administration. How does he portray that?
It's a very good question. He is very admiring of Obama and also of Biden, although in a different way. I mean, he really, really looks up to Obama as kind of some sort of a paragon of American politics. Biden, he looks at more as a successful politician, as somebody who knows how to get things done, and who's spent a career in politics and is sort of an experienced hand. And that's the way that those two characters are portrayed in the book. There are certain gaps and so on. For example, he compares Nixon's attempt to use the IRS against his political opponents. The bureaucracy blocked him. Bureaucracy hated Nixon. Obama did use, and he doesn't mention one word of that, did use the IRS against his political opponents. It went after the Tea Party. I mean, some of you may remember the name Lois Lerner, who was an official in the IRS who admitted to having done so. And it's a glorified portrait of Obama. He clearly admires him, and we talked last month about how Chapin really admired Nixon, although he was willing to see some of the flaws. You don't see that in the portrait either of Biden or of Obama, and you would think that the portrait of Biden in particular might be somewhat qualified, but it really isn't. It's a good question, though.
Right.
Yeah, I think that what you have is a person who's basically a lawyer for one side of the political divide, that is the Democrats. And the issue that I have basically, and I think some people have also commented on that about the book, is that his job was basically to articulate strategies to attack the Republicans. And when the Republicans then responded on the same sort of, front, basically by devising their own legal strategy, then he gets offended and critical. That to me, I think, is one of the biggest weaknesses of the book. But he's, I don't know what Mike thinks. I think he's much more adoring of President Obama. He does have very positive things to say about President Biden, but in a way, based on his experience and the fact that Joe Biden has been a veteran, he has been there for a long time. But his adoration for Obama is much more personal, I think, and to some degree more ideological. But there is no way going around it. He has a hatred for Trump.
Yeah.
And it comes out very loud and clear also, which is, again, the irony of the book. This is what the issue is. That is, instead of loving and hating, we want to see a more critical assessment of these administrations and these individuals. But in the end, we get a much more personal and emotional assessment.
We do have a caller. Let's try to get Nancy's call on before we take our top of the hour break. Nancy, thanks for holding. You're on Talkback on the KGVO Book Club. Hi.
Yeah, morning, Goy. Okay, a couple of things. A democracy in peril, is that part of the problem here, that the United States is being misrepresented as a democracy instead of a representative republic, constitutional republic? And also Barack Obama. I've done a lot of research on the man, and he did grow up in a communist family. This gentleman who wrote the book, is he more towards the Marxist ideology like Obama is? And thank you so much for your answers.
Okay, thanks for the call, Nancy. Gentlemen, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, he's using the term democracy in a general sense, that our democratic republic is in danger because of extreme and ethically, particularly because of ethically dubious decisions made by people in positions of power. And I think he's right. I think that the problem is that it exists on both sides, and that we need to be cautious about this. I'd be a little careful about Obama's background. Obama's background is interesting. I mean, he claims, single mother and poverty. His mother was a hippie. She wasn't poor. There's a difference. She was a graduate student in anthropology, and he was largely raised by his grandparents, who, on his mother's side, who were, they lived in Hawaii, and his grandmother was a manager of a bank. She's not, and so I seriously doubt that she was actually a communist.
Relatively middle class.
Yeah, right. Well, or upper middle class.
Yeah.
His grandfather was kind of a working class guy, but he lived in a very comfortable household. He went to Punahou, which is the oldest prep school west of the Mississippi, where the Hawaiian planters sent their children before sending them back to the Ivy Leagues in the East, for 100 years before Obama's. So anyway, there is a point in all this, and particularly to what Mehrdad said. He uses the term dog whistle. He says the Willie Horton ad was a dog whistle. That's something you hear a lot. Dog whistle means that somebody did not say something you're accusing them of saying. That's what it means, because they didn't say it. And so you have to invent it for them. And I think it's one of the cheapest forms of argument. And it's one of the real low points, I think, of the book, because Bauer is an excellent lawyer, and he's able to marshal his arguments very well and very persuasively if you don't know more than he's telling you.
We're going to take a break, come right back after the top of the hour. With this, by the way, in case you're just joining us, what are these guys talking about? This is the KGVO Book Club. It's a book by Bob Bauer called The Unraveling, Reflections on Politics Without Ethics and Democracy in Crisis. So if you would like to get in the queue, give us a call right now. The news will take a couple of minutes. We have Dr. Mehrdad Kia on the phone, Dr. Michael Mayer here in the studio. The only thing we're missing is you, and the phone lines are open at 721-1290. Or you can use the KGVO app to make your comment. Stay with us.
This is Talkback, 721-1290 or 1-800-568-5309.
This is Newstalk KGVO, AM 1290 and 98.3 FM. KGVO, Missoula's news and weather station.
Welcome back, everybody. It's hour number 2 of Talkback for this Monday, December 16th. KGVO Book Club continues. Brought to you this morning by our friends at Harrington Surgical Supply. Their mission remains the same, to restore confidence and comfort into your daily life. Phillips Janitorial does both residential and commercial cleaning, your home and your business. So give them a call today, 406-260-6617. Phillips Janitorial. Y West Storage is out at the Y on Two Smokes Way. If you need some storage as we head into the Christmas season, into the new year, give them a call, 406-510-0590, because Y West is making room for you. And by 123 Seamless Gutters. Yes, there's still time to get your gutters repaired or installed before the nasty weather arrives. Give them a call, 406-240-2669, as they are protecting the foundation of your future.
The views and opinions expressed on Talkback are not those of the staff, management, or advertisers.
Say we welcome you back, everybody. Peter Christian here, Mr. Nick Christensen over there, taking your phone calls on Talkback on the KGVO Book Club, which, of course, stars our friends, Professor Mehrdad Kia, who is in his palatial office overlooking the vista of the University of Montana. The air is really, it's very thin up there. But anyway, also joining us here in the studio, the more pedestrian Dr. Michael Mayer is here, Professor Emeritus at the University of Montana. Gentlemen, let's continue with this book, The Unraveling, Reflections on Politics Without Ethics and Democracy in Crisis. Whew, that's all the time we have. Go ahead.
It's as Mehrdad said at the beginning, it's a frustrating book because he raises some very important issues. One of which is the attacks on institutions. And one of the things that he cites for this is the refusal to accept the results of elections. But he's talking about Trump. And that's certainly a topic that merits discussion. But he never mentions Hillary Clinton, who referred to Trump
to this day
as illegitimate during his first term, and all the repeatedly throughout that. John Kerry, who said that Ohio was stolen and therefore the Electoral College, or most famously perhaps Stacey Abrams, who still hasn't, I don't think, conceded, as maybe she did eventually 2 or 3 years after the fact, but the election in Georgia. Again, this is something that is really troubling, but it's not just on one side. It's on both sides, and each action by one side leads to, it seems, an escalation on the other side.
Let me ask you this, and again, I haven't read the book, but human nature, right, Well, what you're talking about is human nature. If I don't win and it's close, well, by golly, there's got to be something going on here. That's human nature. But we have to get past that and be able to say, okay, I'm putting this behind me. We're going to go forward and do the best we can to work with what we've got. But there, as you mentioned, there are people who just simply will not get past that.
But I think that it reflects a change in culture that really is troubling. In 1960, one of the main reasons Nixon did not challenge the election was he said he didn't want to create a constitutional crisis. I think he may have meant it, although years later, of course, he did. But I think two other things come into play, as we've talked about before. He needed to win both Illinois and Texas. He was never going to win Texas. But also, Nixon didn't want to be perceived as a sore loser because it would have ended his political career.
Right.
And people didn't challenge elections for exactly that reason. But we seem to have crossed that Rubicon. And Gore contested the election in 2000, which was very close. And Kerry contested.
Our governor, Mark Roscoe, was down there counting votes.
Yeah, and Kerry contested the election in 2004, which wasn't so close. And Clinton claimed that the election was stolen and was illegitimate and the Russians stole it. I mean, all of this, and of course, Trump made the same claims in 2020. And this is just not healthy. Part of the function in a democratic process is you run as hard as you can, and if you don't win, you didn't win. You accept the loss. And there doesn't seem to be any penalty anymore for being the sore loser, which is one of the things that Nixon feared.
Mehrdad.
Yeah, I think that I completely agree with Mike in this. What I was hoping to see in this book is to sort of a discussion, at least to kind of see a history of the discussion of the roots and the origins of partisanship in politics and how this partisanship has derailed the functioning of the government in a more efficient and a more productive fashion. That there is so much, throwing pie at each other that we have forgotten actually why we are there. The purpose of being there is to legislate, to create new laws, to reform the old laws, or to review what is good and what is bad, what could be more productive, and so on and so forth. But it has become a kind of a show that one side basically attacks the other side and the other side counterattacks, and so on and so forth. But if you're looking for that, this is not the book, unfortunately, because when you are a partisan and you're writing about, this whole issue of lack of ethics at the center of American democracy, and in fact productivity of this American democracy, which has become so partisan that we are constantly busy attacking one another rather than doing the things the people need to address or to be addressed. This is when we run into these kinds of things, and he does not address it. He admits it that it exists, but because he's so partisan himself, he ends up blaming the other side again. Well, that's not a new approach. That's not going to be a productive approach. That's just once again blaming one side for malfunctioning of the system. The system is malfunctioning because of both parties and a culture which dominates Washington. And I have to tell you what is another disappointment is because Washington is a very tough place to do anything, to change anything, to reform anything. And every time somebody comes with new ideas or wants to, introduce maybe reforms and so on, so there is a brouhaha. Oh my God, somebody's coming who might have a new set of people, who might have new ideas and so on and so forth. He does not address that at all, at least to my satisfaction. And that is even more disappointing. So how can we change this? How can we reform this? How can we introduce new ideas and new policies in a new atmosphere and environment, and not be so embedded in this kind of idiotic and unproductive, political atmosphere? And because he's so much part of it himself, and he has benefited from it, because he rose to prominence and power, because he played a role in it, we don't get any solutions or any ideas in terms of what solutions could be.
And with that, we're up against a break. We have Harry waiting to weigh in on this book called The Unraveling, Reflections on Politics Without Ethics and Democracy in Crisis. And so if you'd like to join in the queue, this is the KGVO Book Club. We'd love to have your thoughts. If you've read the book or not, give us a call at 721-1290. We'll be right back.
Call Dennis Bragg with the updated forecast. More snow, primarily at the higher elevations with a winter weather advisory for up to 3 to 6 inches of snow, but only a trace to an inch in the valleys Monday into Tuesday. Chance of precipitation hovering around 80% with temperatures in the low 30s, overnight lows in the mid-20s, so we'll need to watch for slick roads. Snow levels will be rising 4,000 to 5,000 feet as we go into the middle of the week, so Tuesday looks like rain and snow showers in the valleys, turning to all rain on Wednesday except at pass level.
Okay, we are back on Talkback. Peter Christian here, Nick Christensen taking your phone calls. And, of course, the KGVO Book Club with Dr. Michael Mayer here in the studio, Professor Mehrdad Kia on the phone. And we're talking about a book by Bob Bauer, The Unraveling, Reflections on Politics Without Ethics, Democracy in Crisis. Harry has been waiting the longest. Harry, thank you for your patience, sir. What's up?
Yeah, good morning, gentlemen. Yeah, like you pointed out that, it's pretty much human nature, but people always want to justify or using false comparisons. Like Michael said, well, Hillary, she said that she didn't lose, but then she conceded, which is a big difference as opposed to saying, well, I didn't lose, I never lost, it's cheated. All Al Gore, Kerry, they all conceded. That is a large step to saying, "Wow, no, I'm not going to concede." So but that's a false comparison, or the justification. They always justify in their mind why they do this. Say like the Harry Reid, okay, he did away with the 60 votes. So then the Republicans turn out and say, "Oh, see, we're justified to do it for the Supreme Court." Well, no, they weren't justified because they just extended it on. So that's in their minds they justify it, but it's not really justified. So we're all as human beings, we all have our biases, and the fact that most of us can't see it or not to the point that we really are, how biased we are. So it's the guy. Obviously, he has his points, and Michael has his points, and Mehrdad has his points. But we're all biased in one way or another. But my question is this really new? I'm looking back through the American history. I hear that the government was set up to make things really hard to do things, big things especially. So you have the guy beating somebody half to death on the thing for over the slavery. How new is this? Is this just something that we are? It seems to be a big deal right now because we're in the middle of it, but is it really that new?
It's a good question. And
thanks, Harry.
The answer is yes and no. There are elements that are new and more troubling. I think the real sort of story is that it's cyclical. We have had intensely bitter partisanship in the past, and it flares at times. The early republic was, there were newspapers supporting Jefferson and Hamilton and so on, who called each other, accused each other of treason and the most savage partisanship and personal attacks. That goes back to the founding of the American Republic. There are things that are different in the post-World War II period. The late 40s and early 50s, both parties were accusing each other of being communists or dupe of communists. And again, they weren't saying my opponent...
The Red Scare.
Yeah, they weren't saying my opponent's policies are inferior to mine or they're unwise. They weren't saying that their policies were bad. They were saying that they were traitors. And they called each other that. And I think that
makes for good print.
Yeah, and again, that it calmed down through the 50s. Bitter partisanship during the Vietnam era, as we've talked about several times on this show. But I think we are in a period of intense partisanship. And I don't see us getting out, and there are certain things that contribute to it. They didn't invent it, but the social media, all these other things certainly contribute to the intensity of the partisanship. But getting back to Harry's point about concessions, it doesn't matter much if Hillary Clinton conceded the election if she keeps saying that it was stolen, that Trump is illegitimate, and that and so on. It's the concession is just pro forma, and I think that it's something Stacey Abrams didn't concede for years, and even that was kind of a non-concession concession. I think we've seen some real advances in this, and the question isn't whether it's justified. Harry's right; people justify it in their own mind. What was Harry Reid's justification for reducing the number of votes required to confirm a judicial nomination? Well, it was because he wanted to get Obama's through. Well, what were the Republicans? They're partly it said it's well, they did it, so we'll do it. But it's basically because they wanted to get the Supreme Court nominations through, and it is as Peter said, it's human nature.
We're going to come right back. 721-1290 is our number. Joining us on the phone, of course, Dr. Mehrdad Kia at the University of Montana. Dr. Michael Mayer is here in the studio. And Emmett is waiting. So, Emmett, if you don't mind hanging on, we're going to come right back and give you plenty of time to ask your question or make your comment. Several other phone lines are open, by the way, at 721-1290. 1-800-568-5309. You can use the KGVO app as well. And the book is called The Unraveling, Reflections on Politics Without Ethics and Democracy in Crisis. Whew. Okay, we're going to come right back after this.
Montana State News Network.
I'm Dennis Bragg. Now that formal charges have been filed against the suspect, authorities will continue to focus on finding the remains of Alicia Wood of Conrad as the search is continued for her body at the High Plains landfill north of Great Falls. In charging documents last week, prosecutors said William Glenn Olson of Conrad had strangled Woods and then placed her body in a suitcase and then into a dumpster in Great Falls. Meanwhile, Missoula County authorities say they've been able to identify the woman whose body was found by people looking for their Christmas tree near Gold Creek off Highway 200. Initially, the sheriff's office hadn't been able to identify the woman, but confirmed that information later. The name was being withheld until relatives could be notified. Investigators haven't said if foul play is suspected, but are asking anyone with information to call. A new primary health clinic that opened this past week at Billings Senior High might seem like a unique new idea, but in fact, the clinic for students is actually the third, with the first opened a decade ago. Riverstone Health says the clinics, which offer a welcome drop-in atmosphere, have seen steady growth, serving hundreds of students, and are part of a new trend being tried across the country. The Montana Healthcare Foundation provided a $300,000 grant to cover startup costs. Expect tickets to fly out the door in Bozeman today as deadlines come and go for the next MSU Bobcats game, which will also be at home for the FCS semifinals. Season ticket holders had until midnight last night to reserve tickets, and from 10 to 11:30, season ticket holders today and members of the Bobcat Club will be able to claim their tickets, with student tickets available at 12 noon and then opening sales to the general public at 1 o'clock this afternoon. The Cats remain undefeated after Friday's 52-19 drubbing of Idaho. That sets up a huge home game at home against South Dakota on Saturday.
For more on these stories and others around Montana, download the Montana State News app.
Meet Ingrid, fiery spirit, caring grandma, proud trucker.
I've logged more than 4 million miles in my truck. If people knew what I know, lives could be saved. I was driving outside of Ohio when a gentleman stopped suddenly in front of me. But it takes my 80,000-pound truck 200 yards to stop. I'd given myself extra room, but it's not a chance worth taking.
It's our roads. It's our safety. Visit www.sharetheroadsafely.gov.
My name is Teresa Barber. I was in the United States Navy, and I served overseas in the Middle East and Africa. Early on in my career, I had a commander that taught our suicide prevention training, and the very next day, he took his own life. 90% of suicide attempts involving a gun are fatal. My way of continuing my service is to help protect my community by being a responsible gun owner and by storing firearms safely. Store all your guns securely. Help stop suicide.
Brought to you by End Family Fire and the Ad Council.
We are back on Talkback. 721-1290 is our number. Nick Christensen waiting to take your phone calls this morning for the KGVO Book Club. And before we get our two callers on, I know, Mehrdad, you had a thought you wanted to share about our book and about the comments that have been made.
Yeah, no, it was about Harry, and I think Harry raised actually a very good point and a very good question. He's right, I think, in terms of the overall, accepting the results of an election. And this has now, unfortunately, and I'm very worried about this thing that I don't accept the results of this election, whether it's coming from the Republicans or the Democrats. But in addition to that, I would add sort of creating fictional sort of situations to demonize the other side to the point that actually your supporters are convinced that your demonizations are actually factual and they are truthful. We saw, for example, the whole issue of Russian collusion, which was, I don't know, from whose sleeve this was pulled out from, but, how many millions of dollars, how much was spent on investigating this and so on and so forth. Now, I would think that in the realm of politics, I could find several issues with regard to Trump that I would be critical of, or I would actually put them in front of the American public to say, do you really want him to implement these policies because they have such and such consequences? But of course, we didn't do that. Instead, we adopted the more kind of lazy and the more personal sort of attack, which is basically calling him an agent of Russia, which was absolutely absurd. But a lot of people accepted it. We spent millions of dollars, and we found out there wasn't such a thing. And what is very worrisome is that actually the media joined in. So, I'm not going to go name names, but, one person on MSNBC started her show every night on the question of Russian collusion for nearly 2 years. And it is now all puff, it's all smoke in the air. And she has never apologized for that. This is how this kind of politics becomes absurd, basically, and completely counterproductive.
All right, let's get folks who've been waiting on the line. Let's get Emmett up first. Emmett, thank you for holding. You're on Talkback. Go ahead, sir.
Well, thanks for taking my call. Well, this sounds like a very, very depressing book. I don't think I'll get it.
I agree with you, Emmett.
Oh, come on, it's a barrel of laughs. But no, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I think I'll buy Treasure Island instead or something enjoyable. But it shows, I think, the rank hatred for liberals against Republicans or anyone with a conservative bent. In other words, if you believe in God and faith, you're a threat to democracy. They want to do away with faith. If you stand against abortion or gay marriage, they consider you a threat to democracy. They have this dogmatic code where anything that is outside liberalism somehow is a threat to democracy and it's heresy, and you can be excommunicated from society. And if you win, then that's the problem. Here's the thing is about in the past, like the 60s and the 1950s, when we had Democrats and Republicans, but we didn't have these issues like abortion and gay marriage. Everyone agreed about faith and God. Everyone believed that homosexuality was gravely a sin and disordered, and people did not believe in abortion on demand. But the Democrats have an agenda to transform this country with these radical ideas, and of course there's going to be pushback, and so they try and marginalize and demonize all the Republicans or just anyone of faith who is against this. They're a threat to democracy. This is a threat to democracy. So it's really sad that someone is saying that this is the unraveling of democracy when Republicans win or Trump wins. It's very sad. So
Emmett, let's let them comment on your comments. Thanks for the call.
Thank you.
Gentlemen, your thoughts about what Emmett had to say. Mehrdad.
I actually do not agree with Emmett in this case. I don't consider, for example, belief or conviction in diversity of sexual orientation as a dogmatic democratic sort of agenda. I believe that it's a right of people, inalienable right of any American to be whatever he or she is, of whatever orientation. I won't go there. See, this is the problem. I think we immediately start attacking and labeling the other side, and I think Emmett just did that. And I am one who believes that we should avoid labeling and accept that we are a very diverse nation on every ground that we can think of, politically, personally, sexually, ideologically, whatever. And if we want to live in a true democracy, I think inclusivity and making sure that all our sisters and brothers in this country who are citizens of this country, and even those who live as residents in this permanent residents in this country, are treated in accordance with law and are free and equal before law. I think it's demonization is the worst part of what this culture, this political culture has become. And I think we should do everything to avoid it.
Okay, we're going to come right back. We have Jeff waiting to visit with you gentlemen. And, hey, this is the KGVO Book Club. We're coming right back. Another half an hour yet to go. If you'd like to get on the conversation, 721-1290 is our number. Back right after this.
Hey, John.
We are back on Talkback. 721-1290 is our number. Peter Christian here. Nick Christensen over there taking your phone calls this morning during the KGVO Book Club with Dr. Michael Mayer here in the studio, Professor Mehrdad Kia on the phone, and Jeff has been waiting for quite a while. So, Jeff, good morning, sir. Thank you for your patience. What's on your mind?
Hey, good morning, gentlemen. 2 points real quick. I think something I didn't hear it talked about. I hadn't been listening completely, so personal matters are occurring right now. But I think one of the big things is that just the pure volume of information in the internet age. When you talked about early on in the country and partisanship, that was in newspapers and brochures and flyers and different things, pamphlets that were published, and yeah, you could get it, but it wasn't as dense as it is now. Now you're inundated 24/7. Everything is impinging on you. And that sheer volume, as I think Stalin said, quantity has a quality all of its own. And so I think that just a volume of information is a problem. Second of all, tying into that, it's something I've mentioned before on this show, is the noted neuropsychiatrist Ian McGilchrist, in his book, The Master and His Emissary, The Divided Brain and the Making of the Human World, or the Western World. It's not a book that you could have on a book club. It's 608 pages, and I don't think you would want people to have to go through that. I won't say wade, because I found all of it fascinating, but it is very deep. And but in there he talks about, tries to answer the question of why do we have two hemispheres in the brain, and more importantly, how do they work together? And he comes to a conclusion that we have a Western world at this time that is primarily functioning out of the left hemisphere, which is very black and white, only gets information from the right hemisphere, is not nuanced at all, very egotistical, wants to be right, has to be right, will lie to be right. I mean, he has documented evidence of case studies of people with brain deficiencies in the right hemisphere, and the left hemisphere just becomes completely unreliable. And when I read that, I thought, that kind of sounds like a lot of our news that we're getting today, is that it's just, things are just not reliable. And so I think that a large part of the problem, bringing it back to the book, is that the author as you describe him, argues out of his left hemisphere, and he has to be right. And it's kind of a variation on the Republicans' pounce, which anytime something happens, like the pardons that President Biden issued, Republicans criticize pardons. It's not that President Biden issued pardons. It's that the Republicans are criticizing the pardons that Biden issued. And so, it's that kind of an attitude comes out of the left hemisphere, and I think actually it contributes most to the divide. If we could go back to a balanced and more nuanced approach, I think we could really, really improve relations, not only in our country but throughout the world. Unfortunately, I don't know that human nature is going to let us do that.
Would that it would, yes.
Yeah, I think we see the kind of thing, without going to the physiological origins, that Jeff's talking about, though, in the media. We used to have facts on which we agreed. We depended on the New York Times, the Christian Science Monitor, the New York Herald Tribune, and after the early 60s, the Washington Post, to provide objective journalism for us. And so while we might argue on the floor of the House or the Senate over a policy, the basic facts were something accepted by both sides more or less. And it's just not true today. And a lot of this has to do with the fractioning of the markets and the sources of news. And it's not. I don't think it's healthy. I know in the early Republic, for the first 100 years, we had very biased media sources, and the Republic survived and thrived. But as someone who was raised in mid-century with that idea of this ideal, really, of objective journalism, I certainly miss it.
Mehrdad.
I think Jeff is pointing out. Hold
on, Mehrdad. Jeff wanted to comment. Go ahead.
Oh, yeah, please.
You brought up a point I just want to address, that the Senate is no longer a deliberative body. It used to get together and debate, and they would have floor debates with all members present, and actually have arguments among themselves and try to convince the other sides. Sometime last century that we lost that. They don't do that anymore. They get on the podium in front of the microphone. Often they're alone in the chamber, and they make their proclamations like they're talking to everybody, but they don't get together and deliberate. They get together to vote. But as I understand it, there's no deliberation anymore.
Thanks, Jeff. Thanks for the call. Gentlemen, go ahead.
Yeah, I think Jeff is, putting his focus and really hitting a very important issue, and that is the fact that when a country, and especially its establishment, the media is part of the ruling establishment, the two political parties are part of, are the establishment, the political establishment, they are incapable of actually agreeing, as Mike said it correctly, on certain principles, and then debating the policies. You have a real crisis. Facts are facts. In the discussion in the media about the war in Gaza, for example, for the first time, I actually heard justifications for Hamas, which is quite amazing in some ways. I thought we all agreed that Hamas is a terrorist organization. No, apparently it wasn't. And there were some students who have been taught in their classes in some elite, schools that Hamas might be actually a liberation force for the Palestinian people, so on and so forth. To me, these are very disturbing signs when facts that are, accepted by anybody who knows something about, for example, and I'm giving just an example about Hamas, is very well known. When you do not agree on these basic facts and you create your own fictional facts, whether they're called facts or not, I don't know, they're your own fiction, and try to push it and shove it down and actually perpetuate this on media outlets, that's when things become really, really problematic. And it actually affects you saw it, our foreign policy. Here is, and I'm giving this as an example, here is a country which is actually fighting for its survival, the State of Israel. and it has been attacked by a terrorist organization called Hamas. And it's trying to actually use this opportunity to dismantle this enemy which has attacked, killed, decapitated, raped, innocent individuals, innocent citizens, Israeli citizens. And then suddenly, first the media starts attacking Israel for, crossing the line as well. And then the Biden administration actually, takes the lead on actually criticizing and attacking Netanyahu. Now, I'm not, 100% person behind Netanyahu, but I have to say, if our country was attacked, we would all agree this is going to be the way to do it, to defend ourselves. Can you imagine if the Israeli government had accepted the media notion and the Biden administration notion that it had to discuss and negotiate with Hamas a ceasefire? It would have been a disaster. Why? Because it wasn't based on facts. Because Hamas is not an organization that you can negotiate with. It's a terrorist organization. That is when you deny facts and you do not agree with basic facts that you're dealing with a dangerous organization. This is, I think, and I'm just giving this as an example. And of course, the media itself has become very much infected with this kind of thing that, these facts can be actually interpreted in different fashion. And instead of discussing the differences in policies, we are now questioning the very basic facts that we need to work with.
And with that, we're up against a break. We're going to come right back. Ben is waiting to visit with us. This is the KGVO Book Club. Dr. Michael Mayer here in the studio. Dr. Mehrdad Kia joining us on the phone from the University of Montana. We are coming back right after this.
Winter is here.
Anyone can choose to make a difference. You can help people succeed, rebuild after disasters, protect the environment, or feed the hungry. Not only will you make a difference for others, but for yourself. You can earn money for college, learn career skills, and make friendships that last a lifetime. Make a difference. Choose your future. Choose AmeriCorps.
Hey, welcome back. This is Talk Back. We're rolling right along. Only about 15 minutes left in our time together for the KGVO Book Club. The book by Bob Bauer, The Unraveling, Reflections on Politics Without Ethics and Democracy in Crisis. Dr. Mehrdad Kia is on the phone. Dr. Michael Mayer here in the studio with us this morning. And Ben has been waiting through the break. So, Ben, good morning. What's on your mind?
Oh, hi. Yep, thanks for taking my question. I'm reminded of, while reading Bauer's book, of Oscar Benavides' famous quote. He was the president of Peru during the 30s, and he equipped, for my friends, anything, for my enemies, the law. And I wonder if you guys think that sort of summarizes his book. And also, there's been some discussion over between some of your callers, which side is most responsible for the unraveling. And Bauer himself is openly hostile to the First Amendment, but are not most of our civil liberties based on the First Amendment? And I just don't see the same hostility to the First Amendment from the Republican side. What do you guys think of that analysis? Thank you.
All right. Thanks for the call, Ben. Appreciate it. I believe Ben might be a first-time caller, but...
No, Ben's called in before,
good.
Always with good questions.
Excellent.
I think the cliche that for my friends anything, for my enemies the law is right, and it's unfortunate that the weaponization of the legal system is the phrase is. It's an unfortunate phrase, but we've done that, and Bauer does talk about that, and he does. In fact, at times say, "Yeah, gee, I might have been a little responsible for some of this." But instead of campaigns going after each other, they go after each other through the law, and that does raise the stakes considerably, and it further enhances or expands the role of the Supreme Court, which is why we have such bitter nomination fights. And It strikes me as amazing because while Bauer does talk about some of that process and some of the nomination fights, he does not mention the Bork nomination in the 1980s, which is not the first controversial nomination. Southerners held up John Marshall Harlan in the 1950s, not because of anything he did, but because his grandfather was on the court and was the sole dissenter in Plessy and said the Constitution is colorblind. I mean, these things have been around, but for a long time. But for much of the 20th century, the first half of the 20th century, justices or prospective justices didn't even appear to testify. It was much less controversial because the courts did less, and the turn to law has exceeded this. And I think a real touchstone that Bauer might have dealt with. It was the nomination of Robert Bork to the Supreme Court. Bork was a distinguished scholar.
That's where the term being borked came from, right?
He was a professor of law at Yale, but he was attacked not because on the grounds that people disagreed with him, but he was attacked because he was evil personified. And one of the most astonishing exchanges was Joe Biden and Howard Metzenbaum and Ted Kennedy grilling, again, two of them cheated in law school, grilling this distinguished professor about Buck versus Bell, which was a case that involved compulsory sterilization in Virginia in the early 20th century. And Virginia had a law that said if you became dependent on the state, you could be subject to compulsory sterilization. Excuse me. Usually it was applied to women, and Carrie Buck was a subject of that. And it went to the Supreme Court, and Oliver Wendell Holmes, on maybe his worst day in the court, decided that 3 generations of imbeciles is enough. It wasn't an insult, by the way. That was a technical term of art for an IQ range.
Sure.
But what the basis of this? Why were senators asking a Supreme Court nominee about Buck versus Bell, which was from the 1920s? Because Bork was on the Court of Appeals for Washington, D.C., when they decided a case. And that case involved a battery company that had a regulation saying that fertile women could not hold a certain job because it involved necessarily exposure to lead, which is catastrophic for a fetus. And, you don't always know immediately when you're pregnant.
Right.
And so the damage is already done. They did it, I think, partly out of humanitarian concerns, but I think also out of concerns about getting sued. But because it was dangerous, they paid the people in that job very well. And so a group of women sued to have access to that job. They first went to OSHA, the Occupational Safety Administration, and OSHA decided in favor of the company's rule. They said the company's rule was fine. And then it went from there to the Administrative Law Court, which upheld the ruling of OSHA. And from there, it went to the D.C. Court of Appeals. Bork was part of a 6-1 majority that upheld that. The facts of the matter weren't even there. The only thing before the appellate court is whether or not there had been errors in law or errors in process. And yet here were 3 senators accusing a nominee of supporting compulsory sterilization, which wasn't even part of the case.
Wow.
And this is the kind of thing that gets out of hand. And then, going back to Harry's point, that then the other side goes after their opponent's nominee, and the things just continue to escalate.
And with that, we are up against our final break. 721-1290 is our number. We have all of our phone lines open. If you would like to comment on the book, The Unraveling, Reflections on Politics Without Ethics and Democracy in Crisis, a book by Bob Bauer. We are coming rapidly to the close of our time together, so take advantage of it. Give us a call at 721-1290. We're coming back in just 1 minute. Hey, welcome back. 721-1290 is our number. It's the KGVO Book Club. Peter Christian here, Nick Christensen over there, taking your phone calls, producing Talk Back this morning. On the phone, Dr. Mehrdad Kia, Professor Mehrdad Kia at the University of Montana, Dr. Michael Mayer, Professor Emeritus at the University of Montana here in the studio. And, of course, we're talking about the book by Bob Bauer, and I believe Emmett is next. Emmett, you're back. Go ahead. What's up?
Yeah, I just kind of like to respond to what Mehrdad Kia has said and some of the professors. When I was making my comments, what I was really trying to say was, it is the Democrats who really are kind of making a war against ideas. According, this book illustrates that Republicans aren't the ones who are being divisive with the culture war. These are not wedge issues. It's the liberals who are pushing an agenda, and Republicans and conservatives like Rush Limbaugh are simply trying to push back against this and save America, make his soul rest in peace. I mean, we are trying to make a more perfect union, and I absolutely believe that people, whether you're black, you're white, you're Jewish, or Protestant, Catholic, should be respected. But to have a more perfect union, we need to get back to morality. We cannot have everything as relative, and there are no absolutes, no matter how you live or, orientation or anything. We did believe in God back in the 50s and 60s. We were a more perfect union because we did not believe in moral relativism, but we had moral absolutes. And as a person of faith, I just feel like I have an obligation to stand for Christian morality, for not even just Christian morality, but right and wrong. It's very common.
All right.
So what do you, it's almost like you guys have, my question is, have often then are thinking that Republicans are part of the problems as well, or conservatives. How do you feel about that in Rush Limbaugh? It doesn't sound like you guys would be fans of Rush Limbaugh. I loved him.
All right. Well, thanks for the call, Emmett. Gentlemen, we're kind of far afield from the book, but your thoughts.
Well, my point is, and has always been, that as a citizen, as a humble citizen, I should say, and this is also a response to the excellent point raised by Ben. His point is very well taken. Is that I do not approach politics, and I do not approach, issues as a Democrat or as a Republican. I try to see, for example, just giving an example and not talking about abstracts. Mike and I talk about U.S. foreign policy, for example. U.S. foreign policy is our focal point in terms of the program we have, Hotspots, on KGVO. I do not approach it as a Republican or Democrat. I always look at it from the perspective of what is the U.S. national interest on the global scale. If I wanted to look at it from Democrat or Republican, I would be betraying, actually, my listeners, because then I'm just, trying to present just one view of it as one political party sees it. That's what I've said this on this program and elsewhere, my problem with much of the media is they have become predictable and completely non-critical because they represent the political parties and their view or their take or their interpretation rather than what is really the issue in terms of the national scale, in terms of country scale. And instead of looking for the other side to blame, how can we resolve this issue together, both political parties and the rest of us? So my problem with this approach, and Bauer's book is suffering from the same problem. That is, he claims, to look at where the problem comes from, and then he comes up, in the end, more or less, very shyly and politely say, it's their attitude. It's the Republican attitude. Why are you wasting your time? Just start with saying that Republicans are to be blamed for everything.
All right, gentlemen, we got about 2 minutes left, so real quickly, Michael, your thoughts wrapping up.
Well, my thoughts are going to turn toward next month, where we'll be talking about Adam Kirsch's book. It's Kirsch, and the title is On Settler Colonialism, Ideology, Violence, and Justice.
Wow.
And it's published by Norton, and it's not a very long book, and it's an interesting critique of an ideology, this notion of settler colonialism that's come to have a prominent place in the American Academy and American universities, but also it's seeped out into the political debate as well.
All right, Mehrdad, your thoughts before we
and unlike Bauer's book, book. I think it's not going to be a depressing topic, but actually it's going to be a very productive discussion.
All right, good deal. Gentlemen, as always, it's a pleasure and a privilege having you with us, sharing your expertise. And Mehrdad, you're going to be with us tomorrow, is that right?
Unfortunately for your listeners, yes. Unfortunately for me, yes. Our good friend Bob Seidenschwartz invited me, and I'm privileged and honored to be there with you.
Good deal. Well, it's always a pleasure. Gentlemen, thank you so much. Appreciate it. And, of course, Nick, I know that you wanted to add a little bit to what Mehrdad said about what's coming up on tomorrow's program.
Yep, Mehrdad and Bob will be with us tomorrow. I was going to mention that from 8 to 9. They're going to talk about what's going on in Syria. And then from 9 to 9:30, we're going to have Montana GOP Chairman Don Kay. And then from 9:30 to 10, we'll have James Brown, who was taking over for Troy Downing, insurance commissioner, and or what is it?
State auditor,
state auditor, and insurance commissioner. Yeah,
right. Yep. All right. Well, listen, for all of you who had the opportunity to stay with us throughout the hour and a half program of the KGVO Book Club, thank you so much. I hope you learned something. And if you want to go out and buy the book, well, maybe not. But thank you to all of you for being a part of the show, especially all you folks who called in and shared your thoughts. We do appreciate that. That's what Talkback's all about. So get out there and make it a great day, and maybe we'll have a little actual snow on the ground. You never know. Have a wonderful day, and please drive safely out there.